Welcome back, guys. This is going to be episode 5 of the Manta 400 replica rebuild. So, got the car uncovered. As you've seen on previous episodes, the car's been covered up for a while we've been working on the Air 200 down there, just to keep the dust off it. So, all the covers and everything are now off this. So I'll give it a quick blowing down with the airline and a blowing tool. There was a bit of dust that I got on there that had just gone underneath the cover, nothing too major, so that come off pretty easily. So in this episode we're going to be concentrating on trying to get the wiring loom installed in this car. While it's at this bare shell stage, it's easier now to get the wiring loom in at this point and get it all routed and everything behind the dash, through the bulkhead, and then along the floor, through where the back seats go, into the boot area, and then around to the back lights, and obviously around down the front inner wing, and then across to both front lights, the indicators, etc., and the wipers. We're not going to be installing the injector loom into this car because we're going to be running carbs, so the injection loom on these is a separate loom. That being said, there is going to be a hole, I don't know if you can see it there. There's going to be a hole in the bulkhead where the injector loom used to go, so we're going to have to deal with that and try and put something in that to fill that hole up, some sort of a big bung something. Obviously I'm not going to be welding on the car while it's in fresh paint. I'm not sure if the previous keeper had plans of putting sort of an original injection engine back in this car, but obviously if I was building this from scratch I would have plated that up before the car was painted. But this is the situation at the minute. I can't weld the car in fresh paint, so we will have to just put a bung or something in that hole, just sort of water and a draft getting into the cabin area. So we're going to be digging this wiring loom out, which is currently here. It looks like this. So this resembles something like when you get your Christmas tree lights out the attic after the previous Christmas. So this is all tangled, looks like a bit of a rat's nest, so not going to be a fun job to do, but I've got to untangle all this. Once I've got it all untangled, I'm then going to go about re-wrapping all this and retaping it all, getting rid of any stuff that we don't need. There is some sort of a old alarm box in here, or various bits of alarm boxes in here, and immobilizers and all sorts of stuff going on, which we're not going to be reusing because we don't have the fobs or anything like that for this car. So I've got to remove all that from this loom before I install it, and then get it all retaped up, because I will have to peel quite a lot of this back to remove the sections of the alarm and immobilizer and so on that I'm not going to be using again. So I'm going to crack on with this now, get this untangled, stretch it out down the floor, and then set about removing all these gubbins from there. So we've got this section here. You can see they've cut this away from this wire there, so now that needs resoldering. That section needs to go back on there, and there's a few the same. So where they've actually cut the immobiliser into this part of the loom, these wires need rejoining there now. There's two black wires that need to go back in there. So we've got a solid black and this one there with a brown tracer on it, so should be easy enough to do, because obviously the wires are colour coded, so can't really go wrong with that. And then we've got this section there which needs to go back on to this section here. Sorry guys, I'm just trying to show you this while I'm holding the camera in my hand as well, so it's quite difficult. But then we also have some random stuff going on like this, which I've just noticed, but that is actually just a take-off loom by the looks of it. So yeah, so they've just bridged that into here, which I'm guessing that was probably to cut one of the ignition feeds to prevent it from turning the ignition on before you activate the alarm or the immobiliser. So that can come out, because we no longer need that either. So now we're left with the original loom with some joins in. So what we're going to do is I'll cut that, and I'll put a sleeve of heat shrink over there, and then I'll resolder this. Same with that one, I'll cut that, put a tube of red heat shrink over that, resolder it, and then heat shrink it up. So any breaks that I come across, I don't really want this taped up kinda half a job on there, so I'd rather get it all done right. Let's get it resoldered and reheat shrinked. So there's going to be a few bits like that to sort out, and then we'll crack on. Just had a bit of a brainwave here guys. I'm actually pretty sure that in my storage container around here in the yard, well, you could call it a storage container, it's actually a 45-foot HGV box trailer, which is quite loaded with parts for Mantas and Asconas. Up in here, I'm pretty sure that I've actually got a good uncut wiring loom. So I've just been sat there starting to do the repairs on the loom, and I thought to myself, all the effort that's going into this car, do I really want to be putting a loom in that's had solder repairs when I could potentially have a good loom sat here in this trailer? Do I really want to be wasting a few hours repairing this loom when I've got a good loom up here in this trailer? Probably not. So we're going to have a look in here. Just bear with me a sec. Sorry about that guys. Typically, as soon as I got the trailer doors open, the battery died on my work lamp, so I've just had to nip back to the garage and get another torch. It's not as big as the one I had previously, so the light in here might not be very good, but I just thought I'd take you on this little adventure with me while we have a dig in this trailer and try and find this wiring loom in the dark, which is always fun. So you're going to see in here there's quite a lot of stuff buried in here, including an Ascona. That's actually earmarked for a build at a later date. We're going to be building this into a 400 replica Ascona B. I've got quite a lot of stuff for this car, so that should be an interesting build. Stacked of wheels, and this thing is actually double floored, just rammed with Opel parts. If there's anything you need, any of you guys that are struggling for any parts, we probably do have it in here. This is sort of a private collection. We don't tend to sell much just because we don't really have time to sit about and wait for couriers, package stuff up, post stuff out. So if there's anything you need guys, if you're willing to come and pick it up, give us a shout. I'm sure we've got stuff in here to help a lot of people out. So let's have a look about and see if we can find a decent loom. And there is a loom there, but that's actually an injection loom. That's the one I was on about earlier. In fact, that's actually for a red top C20XE. That's not even Manta, but a similar setup. They are on a separate loom. for the injection, which we're not going to be needing. So we're literally looking at this point for an ignition and lighting loom. So let's have a mooch down here and see what we can see. As I was saying, this is double floored. Stacks and stacks and stacks of stuff in here, guys. So this is not going to be an easy find, but I'm hoping we will have something knocking about, because I'm sure I've seen some looms in here somewhere. So what do we have? It's not very well organised in here, guys, as you can see, because we actually moved away from this garage a couple of years ago. Moved it to a different location. Since then we've actually moved back here because it didn't work out for us at the new location, so we had 2 years there, and we've actually moved back here. We've moved back here in quite a short time frame because we had a full business to move on top of all the car stuff, which again is just a hobby. So everything literally just got slung back in here, and we've just not really had time to go through it and have a dig and have a sort out, unfortunately. Right, so I'm now upstairs. There's a bit of a climb. I've just come across this loom here, which appears to be a good, uncut, unmessed with Manta B loom. There's no chocky blocks in that. There's no additional takeoffs that I can see. So, job's a good one. I'm going to grab this, take this back to the workshop, do a little bit of tidying up on this, rewrap some of it, and hopefully get it installed in the car. So again, as you can see, tons and tons of parts up here. There is a full Manta 400 body kit mould up here as well, if anyone's interested in buying that. It's something we purchased a while ago. We was actually going to start making Manta 400 kits, but we just didn't have time to do it. But yeah, we've got a full kit there for making those, full mould kit for making the 400 kits, if anyone's interested in that. So I'm going to grab this, guys. I'm going to get back to the garage and we'll lay this out and have a look. Well, that was a waste of time. After getting it out in the light and stretching it out, I've actually found that whoever's removed this from a car previously has actually cut straight through the loom for all the front lights, indicators and all that, carry on, and also straight up here into another loom. So that loom is pretty much scrap, so we can disregard that one. So what we're going to have to do now, we're going to have to go back up to the storage trailer, have another little dig, see if I can find another loom which is better than these two. If not, if there's nothing else that I've got in stock, I've got no other option, I'm going to have to repair this original loom that's come out of the car. So I'm going to go and have another look now. Right, so here we are in the other container. Again, rafts and rafts of parts in this one as well. So we're going to have a bit of a rummage through some of these boxes, see if we can come across a loom. That looks like an injection loom. Come on, we're going to have a loom in here somewhere. Just a bag of hoses. Nope. Down there. We might be out of luck here. We might be having to just repair that original loom because this is not looking good. I was sure I had some bloody good looms knocking about, but apparently it doesn't look like I have. Right, we'll leave you here for a minute, guys. I'm just going to pull some of these boxes out And we have a good look in here, the back in them all. Yeah, so that was another bus, guys. There's no looms in there, in that other storage container, which is quite surprising really, because I was sure I had some good looms somewhere, which means I'm probably going to have to hunt some of these down actually, because I've got a couple of builds that I'm going to need looms for kicking around. And obviously after searching tonight, it's apparent we haven't got any decent ones, so yeah, I'm going to have to get and hunt some decent looms. I've actually repaired this loom now. We've repaired this section. We soldered it with heat shrink tape, and I've actually taped it up with some self-amalgamating loom tape. So what I'm going to do now, I'm going to start to lay this loom out in the car, because I think it's actually going to be somewhat easier to rewrap this loom in the car, because this at the moment is just all over the place. There's no rhyme or rhythm to it. Also, there's probably going to be some bits of loom once it's in the car and I know where it's routed to. For example, all these strands here, once this is all in position and it's all where it needs to be, I could probably bond a lot of this together, but obviously until it's in the car and I know how much slack I need, I'm not going to be able to do that. So I'm going to get this in the car and I'm going to start to wrap this in the car. I think it's going to be easier that way. Now I'm going to position the camera the best I can while I'm routing this loom, because I'm only using a tripod setup, which as you can imagine is going to be quite difficult to get inside the car. It's also quite dark inside the car, so I'm going to do my best to rig this up so you can see what I'm doing here. So I'm going to move on into that now, start to get this loom ran through various points and get it all laid out inside. Right, so what we're going to start with here, guys, is we've got our loom inside the car now. This is the loom that goes forward into the engine bay. So we've got to get all this through that hole there. So we're going to get that pushed through there. As I was talking about earlier, there's a hole up here which is actually for the injection loom, which we're not going to be using. So that's the hole that we need to bung up. So I'm going to pass all this through that hole now, work our way all the way through until we get back to our fuse box, and then fuse box, and then the fuse box actually needs mounting up underneath this dash frame, and then we can start laying out the loom for the rear lights, which just runs along the inner sill, goes through this hole there, passes through, and then goes up into a couple of clips, through a hole there, into the boot, round through the rear quarter, then across to the rear lights and to the fuel tank sender, and then down into the fuel pump. So we're going to start here, push this through forwards, work our way back. Right guys, so that's the first part of the loom in. As you've seen there, we've now got the fuse box mounted in position. Now behind the fuse box is a couple of earth straps and also a couple of relays that need to be mounted to the bulkhead. So I'm just going to worm my way under here now, put a couple of screws into these relays, and get the earth straps fastened, and then I'll reposition the camera and we'll start running the rest of this backwards. Right, so we've got the front part of our loom pushed through the hole. I need to get the bonnet up and obviously route it down the inner wing and then across, well, down to this headlight, down to that indicator, and then across the front radiator cross member to the horn and to the headlight on the near side. And then there's going to be a loom that comes across the front of this bulkhead on the outside in the engine bay side, which goes to the wiper motor, heater motor, starter motor, alternator and the coil. So we've got to get in that engine bay and get all that done. At the moment I'm going to have to prop this bonnet up somehow, because at the moment there isn't a bonnet stay on there, so I'll have to devise a way of propping that open with a broomstick or something. Yeah, so we've got all this in. Now, one of the hard parts of running a loom in a Manta is actually this section, which actually needs to come out of this hole up there, which is for the interior light. Now this loom actually runs up in here, up inside the A-pillar, and then across in the roof section and back out of there. So what I'm going to have to do, probably at a later date, I'm not going to have time to do this tonight, but I'm going to have to run a piece of possibly MIG wire, is probably going to be the easiest thing to use. Run a piece of MIG wire down, probably from this hole, down into the A-pillar, down here, pull it out the bottom, tie this loom on, and then pull it back up and across. Once I've got it to this point here, I can actually feed it across the next section by hand and just pull it out of that hole with some needle nose pliers. So we'll do that another time, because I am running out of time tonight and on this episode. So what we're going to do now is we're going to run this loom, this section, into the rear of the car and across to the rear lights, and then we'll get this engine bay open and start running the loom towards where it needs to be in the engine bay as well. Right guys, so we've got our loom routed through there. Now believe it or not, this is just how they was from the factory. There wasn't any kind of retainers or anything down here, it was just kind of pushed under the carpet, that'll do kind of job. So what we might do, we might actually fasten some P-clips in these into here, not entirely sure yet, just to retain this loom back a bit. Or then again I might just get some of the sticky pads little stick on here where I can actually put a cable tie around so I don't have to drill into the car. That's probably a better idea, to be fair. So yeah, I think I'll do that. I'll get some of the sticky pads that allow me to put a cable tie on and just tie some of this back. It then travels down here through this hole. We'll do the same again. We'll pin it across round there. It travels up here, and now we need to go into the boot. And then what it does from here is, believe it or not, it actually passes across there and into this hole where the fuel filler neck also comes through. So it then travels through there, comes out back behind this rear quarter panel, and then across, and then into the rear panel for the lights, number plate lights and all that sort of stuff. And a section of the loom actually comes down and goes through a hole in the floor where there's a grommet, and then down through into the fuel tank sender, and then one comes across the top of the fuel tank, sorry, down to the fuel pump, and then one comes across the top of the fuel tank to the fuel level sender. So I'm going to get this last bit routed in. Probably not going to do a video of this because it's not very interesting. I'll just get this routed in and then we'll move on, and I'll do a video of routing it around into the engine bay, and then we'll start wrapping the loom and tidying it all up, making it look a bit nicer. Alright, so we've got various rolls of tape there, guys, we're going to be using on this loom. Now, this loom normally runs sort of down across the inner wing. Just get this sorted out. Separate these two looms up. Right, so move this forwards. It's actually one of my pet hates, this job. Absolutely hate running wiring looms. Horrible job, but it's got to be done. This is all tangled up in a weird way. And so as I was saying, this normally just runs along the top of the inner wing. Don't know if you can see that with the camera there, but normally it's clipped across the top of the inner wing and then drops down across the front panel. But I don't like the look of that, the way they've routed them from the factory, with a dirty great big wiring loom running down the front of your engine bay. So I tend to drop it down behind the brake servo, put a bit of protection there on this edge, and then I actually run it on the inside of that chassis rail so that it's hidden. Just makes the engine bay a lot tidier and a lot neater. So that's the way we're going to do it on this car. So this loom actually goes across this way. It runs across the top there. Which then goes off to the wiper motor, also off to the heater box, and so it runs down here and goes to the alternator, starter motor. There's a little takeoff loom then that goes from the coil to the distributor. We're probably not going to be running the coil or the dizzy. I've actually had the dizzy blanked off on the engine we're going to be using, and I'm probably going to put a different kind of management system on this, either a standalone management system, or I have got a H&H ignition set up for the carbs, to run the carbs on that engine. So a lot of this again isn't going to be used, but I'm going to route it so it's in there anyway, and then I'll take out what I don't need at a later date. So I'm going to have a quick mess about with this, figure some of this stuff out. This loom wants twisting slightly on the grommet, just to allow better routing for this section, because currently it's pointing the wrong direction. And then I'll start to wrap some of this up and get it all tidied. Right guys, so that's the loom installed for the most part. I actually ended up using the BMW loom tape. I tried to use that self-amalgamating stuff, but it was an absolute nightmare. Let's see if I can find it. So this is the self-amalgamating stuff I got, and it has an additional layer on there that you've got to remove before you can tape it. So you're trying to remove that and use that at the same time, and it just all gets tangled up, and you can imagine trying to wrap a full loom in that with having to wrap it, pull it back a bit, wrap it, pull it back a bit. This is all getting tangled up, so you've got to cut that bit off and then do a bit more. It was an absolute nightmare. So I've gone with the BMW loom tape, which I think is a really nice tape anyway. I have used this stuff before. It's like a fibre type stuff, so it's got a little bit more of a modern feel to it. So I'm just going to duck under the engine bay there. So, as I was saying, we've used the BMW loom tape. We've wrapped pretty much the majority of the loom. There's still little bits like this that I've not done yet. I've actually run out of tape, so I need to order some more. And then we need to go from there back up to this grommet and get that bit wrapped. So just little bits like that. But the loom is now in again for the most part. This actually needs routing up this way. What this has now allowed us to do is actually start getting even the dashboard fitted, because that's all now routed behind the dash. So I'm going to get the top of the dash flocked. Once that returns from the company, we're going to put the flock on the top of that dash. I can then start to fit all the lower sections, which we hydro dipped, and then start to get the clocks in and all that sort of stuff. It'll also allow me to move through here now. I can get the brake master cylinder on, I can get the steering rack in, I can get the washer bottle, washer pump, I can route the wiring now up into the interior lights, the bonnet lights. I can get the wiper mechanism in, I can get all the heater control panel in and all the plastic covers in there, so I can build this bulkhead completely up. It'll also allow me to start figuring out my lights, how I'm going to do these, because I need to also wire in an additional relay for the Sibis Super Oscars, what we're going to have on the front of this. Now in the Manta loom, the original loom, there's actually a couple of hidden wires, which were for front fog lights, which was an optional extra from the factory. And you can actually get a front fog light switch which sits in the dash just next to the binnacle. It's a really rare switch actually. Obviously the rear switch is very common, but the front switch is a very similar switch, but the image on the switch is pointing in the opposite direction. And I've actually got a couple of them, so keeping with sort of the looks of the car, I'm actually going to install an original front fog light switch, and I'm going to use these wires in the original loom as a trigger for the relay, which is why I've left these exposed for the time being. I'm also going to be doing a bit more tidying up once I've got the lights in and I've seen how much slack I need on the wires. I'll then start to tape these up, probably cut them down a little bit, make them nice and tidy. Now the loom is installed, I'm going to obviously start to replace fittings like this and the earth lead connectors, the ring terminals on all the earths I'm going to change, so I know they're all good. There's no corrosion on them, it's going to cause me any issues. Now this has had an additional loom fitted for the twin headlights, which is ran off a relay. So I'm going to be replacing that relay because it's a bit crusty, a bit scabby, and also trying to shorten this loom back a bit because there's quite a lot of stuff going on there. This is actually the way the loom is routed from the factory. This is not me just putting stuff in random places. You've got to bear in mind this is an 80s car. It's old tech, and obviously things have progressed quite a lot since, but that's just the way it is. That's the way it's going to stay. This wire is the takeoff from the alternator to power the relay for the twin lights, so that'll go down to the alternator once that's in. I'm not going to bother wrapping that because it's already got a nice plastic sheath around it, doesn't look too bad. And then we need to start running all this side of the loom down to the starter motor, alternator and the coil. So that's pretty much going to be it for this episode, guys. I know it's not been a very exciting episode, but it is part of the process. It has got to be done. So it all goes for the build prep of the car. It's all part and parcel of it. So there you have it, one Manta wiring loom now installed, rewrapped, somewhat routed, and it now allow us to progress and get on to bigger and better things. So thanks again for watching, and I'll see you on the next one.